We are back on Morning Line. Thanks for joining us. So with us this morning is Beth Joslin Roth. She is with the Safe Tennessee Project. We're talking about Governor Lee's proposal. Came out with it last Thursday about, changing the law in the state of Tennessee. So law-abiding citizens in Tennessee, I suppose, could carry a handgun without a permit if they're over 21 years of age. And so no permitting needed to carry that weapon. I think you were telling me during the break, the mayor, police chief, and others in the Memphis area, Shelby County, immediately came out against it. They have a real gun violence issue there, more so than Nashville, more so than Knoxville. Memphis has a real problem.
Well, Memphis is, according to the most recent data, 2018 data, Memphis is 5th in the country for homicide, and the majority of those are gun homicides. I mean, Memphis's rate of homicide is much greater than the city of Chicago, for example. The police chief in Memphis has been asking the legislature for years to address specifically the guns and trunks issue, which is where a lot of the gun violence in Memphis is the result of people stealing firearms out of cars, many of which are left
we have a problem
unlocked.
Here with that. Yeah,
well, we have a huge problem here. It's gone up. Gun thefts from vehicles have gone up 256% in Memphis since guns and trucks, 390% here in Nashville since that law went into effect, and we know that that's a key driver of gun violence. So I think what you see from the police chief in Memphis, Michael Rawlings, from the district attorney, Amy Wyrick, from the mayor, Mayor Strickland, is an awareness that in a community where there is already a very high rate of gun violence, that any type of policy that is going to introduce more guns into that situation is not going to improve the situation and will make it worse.
And you're of the belief that if this governor plan passes, that it would bring a lot more people to the table with guns, or would it be the same that would say, well, at least now I don't have to go through the permitting process. I was going to do that, but now I don't have to, so I won't. Do you really think it's going to mean that many more additional people are going to say, oh, all of a sudden, hey, I don't have to go through the permit, I'm just going to do it now, when wouldn't they going to do it anyway? Because let's face it, getting a permit is easy. It's easy if you don't have a criminal background. It's a piece of cake. So is it really going to bring that many more people to the table by passing something like this?
I mean, I think it will. And again, to be fair, I'm not, and I don't think anyone else is implying that passage of this law is going to lead to, mass shootouts across the streets of our state. Mm-hmm. I'm not implying that. I don't think anyone else is. But what we can look at is other states that have passed similar legislation have seen increases in homicides, have seen increases in gun deaths.
17 other states in the country?
16 other states. For example, 17. Tennessee is currently 11th in the country for firearm mortality, and of the 10 states that are ranked higher than us, 6 of those are permitless carry states. And in looking at the other states that have passed this legislation and the increases that they have seen, it's generally with homicides, it's an increase of around 5.61%, I believe. So extrapolating that data out, it could lead to as many as 35 to 38 more firearm homicides in Tennessee a year. And we are already currently 6th in the country for firearm homicides. We're 3rd in the country for youth firearm homicides. Mm-hmm. This type of legislation is going to do nothing to reduce those numbers, and based on what's happened in other states, it's more likely to increase those numbers. And that's my concern as somebody who studies this from a public health standpoint. We should be looking for ways to reduce gun violence in our state, not looking at policies that will do nothing to address it and are more likely to exacerbate the problem.
Let's take a call or two. What do you say? We'll go to Ed. Ed, good morning. Hi, Ed.
Good morning, Nick. Good morning, guest. I'm a firm believer in the Second Amendment, as you well know. But I don't want this state to be turned into the Wild Wild West. And it's like the lady said there, and I didn't realize it. Shootouts have gone up in these states where they've had that. And, if you got a weapon on you and you get into it with somebody and they're bigger than you or whatever, guess what? You're going to bring out that equalizer. So an old expression we used to have in the Marine Corps, well, somebody busted the cap on somebody. And you got to have training. I don't care. You got to have training because these people that just go get a permit, say an example, have never been in service, never been around weapons too much, guess what? And they whip that thing out, they're going to be shaking, nervous as a dickens, and they're going to be more people hit. It has a cap busted on them than it shouldn't be. It's not right. So, I'm a firm believer. Go down there and get that permit, get that background check, and at these gun shows, especially for for pistols, I'm a firm believer they're going to have background checks.
All right, yeah, and I know Ed is, as he says, he's an advocate for weapons and doesn't want to take them away from anyone, but he wants it to be, safe. And so, what I get a sense from looking at the governor and other advocates for this, it's like, well, the Second Amendment, it's pretty clear cut. You can just have a gun. I'm just wondering, and I'll ask John Harris this with the Tennessee Firearms Association when he comes on. What do you think is the motivation behind this? Why do you think the governor's pursued this?
Well, that's a really good question because in 2017, when he was asked on the campaign trail if he would support permitless carry, he was very clear in saying that he did not support permitless carry. And I believe the exact quote was, "I don't support it because I'm a guy that listens to law enforcement, and law enforcement is very much opposed to it." So how it is exactly that he has done such an about-face on this issue is certainly a question I think that a lot of us have. There's a lot of punditry out there about what motivated his decision. Do
you think by chance, and this is a shot in the dark, excuse the pun, could it be politics? Could it be that the NRA convention is going to be here in April? Or could it be that the NRA sometimes targets some strong Republican, lawmakers who have voted one way or the other and spend money to get them voted out in the primary? Could that be part of it? And again, then the question would go to the NRA. Well, the NRA, I guess, is always looking for any way to make it easier to get guns. So what do you think?
I think that I agree with every suggestion that you just made there. I think that definitely could play a part in this. The NRA convention is coming here. This is an NRA-backed piece of legislation. It is an election year, and as we saw in 2012 with the Guns and Trunks bill that then Republican caucus chair, lifetime NRA member with an A+ rating, Deborah Maggart, listened to the business community that was opposed to Guns and Trunks. She voted against the bill, and then that same year, in the span of just a couple of months, they spent well over $100,000 to run someone against her in her primary. And ever since then, there has been sort of a threat hanging over legislators' heads that if you don't vote the right way, then there is a good chance that you will get primaried. And that is, unfortunately, that's the way that things operate on Capitol Hill. It shouldn't be that way. I mean, I've actually had legislators say to me on various pieces of legislation, I support your bill, but it's an election year and I can't vote for it because of the NRA. So, I mean, that definitely is something that could be a motivator behind this legislation. What's interesting is in the past, they brought legislation like this multiple years. As long as I've been doing this, it seems like there's always a permitless carry bill up in the legislature. Generally, they don't even get out of committee. And I think part of that has been, in the past, the NRA has not really backed the bill. But beyond that, Governor Haslam made it very clear that he would oppose the legislation and that he would, never sign a permitless carry bill. And so there just really wasn't a path forward for it. Governor Lee coming forward on Thursday, indicating his support, putting his weight behind it. It's almost certainly going to pass, unfortunately.
Let's take some more calls then. Let's go to Joe. Joe, good morning. Hi, Joe.
Good morning, Dick.
Good morning, Joe.
This thing to me is a political football, But I agree that anybody that purchases a gun should have a background check. But that being said, most of all these shootings that we just had one recently, I think in Milwaukee, I've never heard any of these people that did these shootings that had gun permits. So I don't, that's kind of don't make, a whole lot of sense to me.
Well, that's one of the points I think some are going to say, that, look, I mean, the people who are going to go through this process, hopefully, are going to be law-abiding. I mean, a lot of these shootings that you talk about in Memphis or elsewhere are being committed by criminals who shouldn't have guns in the first place.
I mean, that's true to some degree, for certain, but as the caller before this last one brought up, what we see is, I think everybody sort of there are a lot of preconceived ideas about gun violence, okay, in general and here in Tennessee. And one of the things that you hear all the time is that gun violence is, just happening. It's all gang related, it's all drug related, and there's certainly a lot of that happening. However, as the previous caller alluded to, what we see time and time again is people getting in altercations, getting in fights, getting in arguments over stupid things, over loud music being played, over someone perceiving that someone disrespected someone else. And because they have a weapon on them, and they pull a gun and they shoot the other person, and that's hardly something that's isolated to big cities. I mean, we see that in rural areas, we see that in suburbs, we see that in all different ethnic groups, and so again, it just sort of comes back to this idea that when there are more guns introduced into a community, into a situation, there's a higher likelihood of those types of shootings to happen. And we do know, of course, the whole idea that these criminals are going to get the guns anyway, and I mean, there's something to be said for that, but the question for me just keeps coming back to, why do we want to make it easy for them to do so? Why are we not trying to do everything we can to keep guns out of the wrong hands? And we do that by background checks, making sure that everyone purchasing a gun does not have a prohibitive factor that would preclude them from being able to legally own a gun, and requiring people to undergo basic gun safety training so they have a proper respect and an understanding of the responsibility that comes with being a firearm owner. I don't think that those are unreasonable expectations to have, and I think that the vast majority of people in this country and even in Tennessee would agree with that. I mean, as the callers who have called in have indicated, they support the Second Amendment, they support a person's right to keep and have a firearm, but they believe that people should have background checks and basic gun safety training.
All right, on that note, let's take a break. When we come back, we've got more calls coming in. We'll see what folks think one way or the other. Bob, Jason, Ken, and others, if you're on hold, we'll get to you. More of our conversation on this gun issue right after this. Stay with us.